Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live broadcast. We are really pleased to have Paul Christopher here today with our vehicle and mech design class. He'll be going over quite a bit of information related to the class as far as some examples, techniques, and maybe a couple questions towards the end. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them, but I don't think we'll be able to get to many of the questions considering the short amount of time that we have, as well as the amount of content we're going to be sharing. So with that being said, I'm going to now hand it over to Paul and basically take it from there.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining this lecture. I'll be more than happy to give you a brief sense of my process and conceptual design process as a whole, just the sort of standard operation, and hopefully to some of the more advanced students. You'll always learn just a couple of new things just by watching someone else do it. But without any further ado, I'll just give you a brief synopsis as to who I am and as how I sort of came to be as a production artist. Always fascinated with films and always, intrigued by science fiction, fantasy, all of those things as a young kid, and have never really grown out of that. Fortunately, I think it still keeps me quite young in mind and spirit, just being intrigued by those same things. Now with an adult mind, I just try and find ways to make things more compelling and to have of course, more elevated arguments, but still very much with that spirit of a 7-year-old gazing up at the stars and imagining other worlds that might be there. So, couple of things that I have provided in the past have been mostly props, some environment work, some mech work, some vehicle work, character work as well. I sort of am intrigued by it all. And there's also a type of thing called color scripts, or and basically what it is, it's key images taken from a storyboard that you would then elaborate on if you were attached to that art department. One of the prouder titles, or one of the titles that I've been involved with, which I'm quite proud of, is Inception. And I'm sure a lot of people might recognize this as the Inception case. And this one started, as most do, with a conversation, an idea. And with this one, it was quite an intellectual conversation with the highly intellectual Christopher Nolan at the helm of this title. And there was a number of ideas that were being presented, but it's one thing to talk about this stuff, but when you deal with imagery, it's a whole nother thing to just have images, images speak louder than words. And in that case, or in this situation, I just wanted to do just that, wanted to apply a set of images that would get the sort of texture or the sort of feel of what the title is trying to give off. So anytime you're hired by a company or are attached to a production, you have to remember that you're there to serve a purpose, and the purpose is given to you by your design directives. These are going to be what your art director or production designer, what all the creative heads are going to want to attribute the types of feelings, the types of textures given off by a set of images. So it's basically narrative storytelling, or visual storytelling, and that's exactly what we want to do. We want to tell a story. We want to elicit a feeling, and all we have are images to do so. So in this respect, we were even beginning to discuss how much sort of sci-fi aspect, how much futurism, how much retro aspects we could attribute to these things. So these two drawings, in just a simple drawing statement, you can already see the different impetus for the external case. So each one having a distinctly different feel, we opted, or I should say, Chris Nolan was really felt compelled to go a sort of antiquated approach with it. So just the external case, giving that a different treatment, you can see how it certainly starts to touch on that, a bit more of the antiquatedness. Now another thing, as you delve more and more into these things that you're going to design, you want to be able to assess the object or the design objective completely. You want to be able to think through your design. You want to also be able to draw through your design. So we'll use, obviously we'll pour through. In this case, there was a lot of medical research, a lot of catalogs that we were researching, extraction systems for removing blood and various liquid samples from humans, and that was really quite interesting. Some of the images that we were exposed to, which also again just makes this industry just far too much fun. It's just that you're constantly learning, you're constantly being pushed outside of your comfort zone and learning new things. So it's really quite an adventurous little career path, and you don't stop learning, which I, as a teacher, certainly want to instigate. So here, for instance, are a bit more, and I think it's important to see the thought process, because that's what this is. This is a thought process. This is a conversation that you want to have as a designer, as a concept artist, to the company or the project that you're affiliated with, and you have to just ask yourself, what is the most eloquent way I can solve the design problems, whatever the design problems might be. And we will go through that in class, and I've set up exercises every week where it's completely immersive, but in a very strategic way. I want to have you guys assess your design work in a way that is feels natural. There's a sort of a given order to all of this, and again, it all starts with a conversation. It all starts with an idea, and on the page, because you have to get it on the page. I mean, that's what purpose we serve as production artists. We want to get this from text, whether it's a design document or whether it's a script, and we want to attach images, as compelling images as possible, to narrate that story. So these are, again, just some searching and to see how the various compartments and pieces of your main large design will hopefully not obstruct one another. Just how everything is going to work and be in sync with one another. Every piece working to serve the whole. So these would be, again, just sort of seeing through, thinking through, and drawing through the various files and all the various serum extraction systems and how those would connect to the vials. And then also the next design problem became, how are we going to get all of this working mechanisms into a case? So all of these things then become the sort of, it's like a domino effect. You know, one good idea hopefully leads to another. That's very much how I like to think. I come from the school of mind where you can't do a good finish without a good start. Though you can with quite a bit more labor. You know, if you fight through it, you certainly could you know, if you have strong enough will, muster through. But I would rather us get things going from the get-go in a very solid way. Just, you know, solid foundation before in architecture before you put the columns, and then of course the roof. So in that way, I really stand by having a good start, and it will just make the rest of your work a lot easier. So research is definitely key, and I have us do that, and as well just how to make sure that all of the start ideas that you've wanted to really sell, you know, how do we sell that then with the illustration? So, and I'm not going to go through everything, all of my professional work, but I'll just do a gamut of things, certainly as it applies to vehicles. Another task that you might have, and this is perhaps not as what they would describe as wet. This is a bit more of a dry job, but this is something that you would have to do as well, and that is to take an existing piece of an object, an architecture, a prop, and you give it some effects. You give it weather effects, you give it damage effects, and being able to, again, just assess things in sort of the same way of attacking your design problems, but now using the medium of Photoshop to have a different or elicit a different end effect. In this case being what they call photoreal. You have to really stay within the constraints of the medium that you were given. This photorealistic sort of object is going to be a different effect than, say, something like this. This is a line approach, and then, you know, going back to, because I definitely believe that digital leans on a traditional application. If you have a you know, a pretty good command or understanding of your medium, then you will know how to push it. And so that's in that way we will use Photoshop in the quote-unquote pen and marker ways of illustration, and also the sort of airbrush approach as well, and to, again, to get some of the more dynamic effects of a finished photo piece. But all of those things said, you have to always remember that this is an idea. We're pushing an idea. So push your idea first, have that be as compelling as you possibly can make it, and the rest will come quite naturally. But in this piece here, this was for G.I. Joe. They were coordinating with Hummer and various other manufacturers to put a sort of street version of a vehicle that was featured in the film. So this I actually did with, in conjunction with a production designer, another concept artist, and the vehicle company, and we were basically kit bashing, you know, assemblies and trying to come out with a sort of a new kind of street vehicle that had a military ruggedness, but of course wasn't completely military. So just a sort of a blend of the two. And then a lot of the aftermarket features that were put on for the purposes of the script, because there was a, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a suit chase between armored military and a the vehicle, which was this vehicle here, and all of the projectiles, and you got the rigged guns that are a part of that scene. So all of those things being what they need to be based on the interactivity of the flip open, top case, the roof, to reveal a revolving rocket turret. Those kinds of things are certainly fun, and again, part of what you're going to be asked to do in any given career motivated by conceptualization. It really can branch out to quite a range of expression. So as well, you will be asked to coordinate with other artists from 3D realm. This is again another very talented artist who was assembling a lot of this stuff in, I think it was SolidWorks, which is quite a hefty program to tackle. And this artist did brilliantly with it. And I was asked to do some color passes on top of that, and you could see it is sort of what it is. It's, you have to then combine the drawing that has been described to you in this image, and you have to then perhaps extend out a scene, add effects, add the dust and the scratches and the wear and the tear of the finished surfaces, and all those being what they are too, we will break that down, and as we evolve our designs more, we'll express things in that way, where I'll ask you guys to give just another level of dimension to your designs, to your concept work. And in fact, I might just, let me just actually open up a couple more images. I also do environments, and really quite compelled to branch out in that way. And why I love doing environments is because it's sort of, you're thinking about the whole world, the whole color world, the whole the atmosphere, which I really am quite compelled by: tone, color, atmosphere, and that I think helps me come back to then just diagnosing just the element within that whole scene or within that whole universe. If in this instance it's a helicopter or a Japanese guard dog statue, a helipad, all those things, I'm quite compelled to see the interactivity of it all and to put it all together and to try and create a compelling world that is, hopefully believable, because that again is another thing that we want to strive for as image makers. We want to be able to have our audience feel that not only is that thing cool or compelling or new or exciting in whatever way because of some maybe given technology that you're trying to describe with your design, but also you want them to say, yeah, I totally believe that. I totally feel that thing could jump off the screen and exist in actuality right in front of my eyes. If you've done that, if your audience has said that after looking at one of your images or your designs, you've done your job. You've done your job very well. And again, we go into that as well. So let me actually talk a bit about the process of things, and also give you a quick bit of some of the work that I've highlighted from previous students that I think have handled the assignments quite deftly, and hopefully too you'll be able to see how this might help you guys out, help out your thought process. But again, start with the drawing. The drawing is probably one of the basic ways to get an image down on the page, and it's been around for 1,000 years. It's going to be around for 1,000 more. It really is just quickest way to get to your destination from A to B. So with that said, of course, that's where we start. And all things being what they are, you want to be sensitive to proportion. You want to be sensitive to the mechanics of the thing. You want to get the attitude right. And in fact, let me just go back one step and say that you even want to be able to assess things in a quick block-in, very much in this way. What they call the Rorschach ink blot test. And in any psychological 101 class, I'm sure you've been introduced to the idea of the Rorschach test. And the Rorschach test is when you show your subject, the specimen, the audience, your Rorschach ink blot test, they'll hopefully have a given reaction, and we just want to try and take the accident out of that. We want that to be a given thing. We want someone to say, okay, this robot or this design, this mech, this vehicle, it's bad. It's going to hunt you down. It's going to hurt you. It's going to, tickle your family ad nauseum. This thing is not going to be fun in your life. Okay? Well, what are the things that we can do to elicit that? Versus, say, something that would, protect you or make you feel good. All those things are going to have behind them a whole different shape function. We borrow those things, and I'll talk more as we go into class. We borrow those things from nature, and I'll show you even how to accumulate reference and adjectives and things like that to be able to assess things very much. But so right now, in terms of just being able to understand the process a bit, it's really broken down in those phases. It's phase one, thumbnail phase, and I'll also help you manage time, because we want to be able to, when we're given a certain time in our given association with a project, we want to be able to work smart as well with working hard. So by working smart, I really think that's time management. It's knowing what the design objective is, knowing what the time budget is, knowing what the financial budget constraints are, and then it's your job to find, again, like I say, the most eloquent way to speak to your audience. And if you bring your client into that conversation, well then, you're going to make your client much happier, and this phase, this process, is very much akin to that. That's what we want to do. So if I can show my client, already from the get-go, say, this thumbnail, these series of thumbnails here to get our first elaborations of what a vehicle might be, well then, there we are. We're off and running in a good way. We can take it from the ethereal, which sometimes, conversations can be more suggestive than totally directive, because someone might have a totally different sense of what pretty is. For instance, adjectives can kind of enter the realm of subjectivity. So this takes the subjectiveness out of it. This is very objective. It's very much, this is what it is. Is everyone okay with that? Do we have thumbs up? Can we get a lockdown? And the more and more we go, the further along we get, up until, of course, you've got the final materials and all the textures and the dings and the scratches. But to go from here to, say, here in a day and a half would be actually quite doable if you have established a good flow, a good conversation, good communication, good back and forth with your clients. Then full speed ahead. I actually want to take a moment and see if there have been enough questions. I think I'm getting tapped on the shoulder to see if in fact now would be a good time to
Well,
pose that.
well, basically, I have a couple questions here. The
Please.
first one basically is, do you have, what are your recommendations for some concept sketchbooks for people to learn from, basically?
Okay. Okay. Um, I I happen to, and this is of course my own sort of taste, but I I love Sid Mead, I love Ralph McQuarrie, and I love just generally speaking a lot of the conceptual development work that comes from Japan. I think some of their mechs are outstanding. I think the level of awareness they have as far as working mechanics, I think, are so accelerated, and it all serves a great purpose of making awesome mechs. And my gosh, if who doesn't want, you know, a mobile Gundam hanging from the ceiling of their studio? Uh, so that's just generally. Now, as far as books, I will actually talk a bit more about that too in class, but there are perspective books that I think are very beneficial to just have as just a, you know, to establish the foundations of drawing. But so that would just be purely on technique. But as far as design work, there are some great Sid Mead books out there that are getting kind of pricey now, so they're harder to get a hold of. But Obligon would be one of them. He's got some skinnier books that, of course, would be less expensive, and they're called Studio Image series. There's, I think, 1, 2, and 3. They are known as the red, green, and blue books. And just, again, just in terms of seeing the thought process, I think Sid Mead and Ralph McQuarrie are so integral for any student or anyone trying to understand this discipline, to see how the equations, how the formula are happening, because you get to see these guys do the equations, much like a math teacher would love to see you do the equations in the margins of your test to prove that you've done the work. Very much their drawings work in that same way. You can see these guys crunching through the forms, the spaces, the shapes, the negative shapes. It's all there, and you can see also too the thought process, because these guys aren't just giving you the finished pieces. They're showing you their elaborations, and I think that's very important too, is to realize for ourselves as well, is that this is a process. You know, we don't have to get it. I'm going to say get it right the first illustration. You don't have to just go straight to a rendering. You should spend some time thinking about how your design's going to work. What are the ins and the outs, and the driving mechanics, if you will, that are powering your vehicle or your mech or your ship. And again, one of the avenues that I found for some of those books are Kinokuniya Bookstore. For those of you who are located in anywhere near Los Angeles, there's a great venue out of J-Town, Japantown, which is the old LA district, called Kinokuniya, and just incredible. I can't get out of there in less than an hour, and without spending $300 probably per visit. So I try and go there probably two times, 3 times a year. I've had to wean myself very carefully from Kinokuniya. But yeah, definitely. Even you know, Amazon, of course. But I'll have to, and in fact, maybe in a follow-up, what I'll do is I'll write, because I've been getting this question a lot, is I'll write a list and
Actually,
Absolutely.
that would be wonderful. That way we can
Okay.
email it out to everybody.
Great.
Um,
Perfect.
there's a couple more questions I'll ask
Please.
before we
Yeah,
let you go
please.
back to your demonstration.
Okay, great.
The first one is, how long did the suitcase take for you to develop for Inception?
Okay. That took about, and there was just a bit of legwork done. And I got to say, again, just tipping my hat to Mr. Nolan again. The guy draws, and I was just so happy to see that, and actually not surprised, because again, he's such a he gives his worlds such depth, such thought, that I have a real distinct feeling that that guy can assess people's jobs just as well as they can from the various given departments that he is having to have conversations with for his to bring his films to life. Again, I really think he just has such competence with everyone's departments, and it's a very engaging conversation, needless to say. So he basically gave me like a Leonardo da Vinci sketch is what I'm going to basically describe it, and it was this huge on 18 by 24, and he just laid down, I think maybe on a flight from one location to another, perhaps a flight over the pond, where he just used those hours very well and decided to just start drawing the case. And so he had really strong movements already for me to just sort of refine and perhaps re-articulate some areas, and some areas to just give him an overhaul altogether. But to already have that was again very engaging and informative for me. So it only made the process that much richer and rewarding for him because he got to see it come back fairly quickly. So I had, I'd say, start to finish, getting everything right, probably about a week, maybe even less. And that is, again, just for the case alone, having even conversations with the prop master and the production designer, and seeing what all the elements are that need to be thought of when doing the final build. So hopefully the drawing, and I'll go back to it, just does that. It informs to everyone what's going on. The various mechanics that need to be perhaps working. They actually, as things do change as you go in these productions, things changed quite drastically, and even with the number of shots and the number of props, the amount of exposition that they were going to have with this case actually got whittled down tremendously. They just didn't have enough time. But I think he was actually trying to play at having established this technology in a much larger way initially, but then had to just, again, whittle that down for the sake of flow. You have to be kind of brutal as well. You have to have a real brutal sense of editing when doing these too. You have to just be uncompromising, and you have to really be aware of, again, the time budget and the financial budget of the projects that you're involved in, because you don't want anything that's going to be indulgent and require too much budget. If it's going to, say, just take up 10 seconds on a screen, then you really do not want to have it consume a lot of the production budget.
Okay, and I have one last question I want to ask. Basically, Do you perform actual critiques in your class of the students' work? And how does that
Absolutely.
feedback actually work?
Yeah, great question. Okay, and in fact, that's what I was going to,
And I
let
think
me
this will
move.
be our last question for this period and let you go back to your demonstration after that.
Okay, great. Sounds good. In fact, let me do that, and I'll go to my student gallery, where again, these are some of the highlights of some of the classes that I've taught, where these students have really done their job. Have really assessed the assignments quite nicely, and for instance, here would be a sort of like a military vehicle, a bit rough, a bit not everyday sort of working vehicle. It's a bit hybridized, a bit futuristic, military sort of salvage vehicle. So the first pass that this student did after a thumbnail, and what I'll do is I'll actually have us do a thumbnail process. So talking about having the concept process be broken down into phases. Sorry, I just wanted to get to a quick tangent here. But in breaking down the process, I will help you guys evaluate the images or the thumbnails, for instance, in our first phase, the thumbnails that are working, and let me give you those examples here. This would be from another student, but here we have some, again, I think really strong movements, but as far as how I might then further assess things, I would say to then, have a bit more of a rhythm being felt, or perhaps even changing your forms altogether. For instance, this one here, I felt, there's some really nice movements, but perhaps I could change things altogether and give you as students quite a different sense of direction that might be inspiring or somewhat engaging, if only for just the sake of having different design conversations. Another one, another student, for instance, did this, and this is a breakdown called flats. Simple top view, side view, or front view, done in silhouette, and you could see it's a flat shape, but very much alluding to the forms within it. So that would be the very initial impetus that I would have you guys take, and from there, this gentleman then established his drawing, and again, we talk about line versus tone, and what that means when you manipulate your images in those two ways, one being, of course, tonal, one being linear, and breaking things down in that way and having that greater range of expression to add to your repertoire. And then I'll just break things down in a way where I'm refining, but as well drawing on top of maybe fixing various drawing issues, issues with perspective, and then also alluding to how they can, in fact, take their design one step further to, in fact, just keep refining, because that's basically what we have to do, is we have to refine and refine until we're time's up, let's see here, I've got some more samples, and just to give you a sense too of the kind of work that I would ask you guys to be doing in a class, and then how I might give you back an elaborated conversation. But again, here, this is a freighter ship that was designed by another young talented student, Maisie, and she has a really it's a nice sense. It's a good chunk. It's a freighter ship, so it has to obviously feel slow, feel like it's an industrial cargo moving ship of some capacity. So with those major elements down, I then have, and here's actually really quickly what I'll say is typically the more beginner someone is, they might feel sort of afraid to move out of a sort of given, a known. A box is probably going to be one of the most comfortable shapes that we can design with. And as we branch out and as we develop and are able to articulate things more and give things a greater sense of dynamic, we want to do that in just a simple way, in just shape. Well, already you can see that the rectangle is just has a bit more dynamic than a box. Box being every side is equal, whereas with a rectangle, we have just a bit more dynamic with just that longer line on that profile. So in that way, I ask Maisie to actually push out of that sort of box shape and to, in fact, pull a rectangle from that box. And then it's just a matter of doing the same thing with the interior forms and the interior shapes as well, pushing in and out a bit more than just going straight up and down. And then finally, getting a great sense of, or a better sense of pattern and the black and white breakup of your finished design. You want to assess your materials in a way that they're not going to overwhelm and inundate the audience, with just too much surface noise would just destroy the form. So it would be counterproductive to do that. So in that way, that would be assessing the design just purely in design form. Now, when we have then gotten a bit of, we've established a bit of sort of comfort level, then I'm going to ask you to do an illustration. I do not have her before, actually, but I asked her to do an illustration. I don't think, let's see if I can peruse my folder really quickly. I don't think I have the before, which I do apologize. But here is the after. Here is the, she did her illustration, and I'm now adding on top of, or painting on top of that yet again, changing things compositionally, adding things to the environment in the background, changing cloud patterns, softening things up there, perhaps adding secondary ships that might give a bit of action, and again, just adds interest to your scene. So the surface materials being what they are, hopefully describing a bit of the functionality and a bit of the history of the design of your vehicle. So that's kind of a 1, 2, 3, and then 4 way of breaking down how I'm going to have you guys tackle your design objectives. And in the beginning, I'm kind of rigid, and then I get more and more loose as we get deeper into the term. And again, that's just to give you guys a greater sense of sort of guidelines for again, the beginning students, and just for me to get a sense of where everyone is in the class as well. Then I will certainly allow more range and maneuverability for the students that feel comfortable being let go, a bit more. And of course, those who need to lean on my tutelage, I will of course be right there all the way till week 8. So is that it? Is there another question, Ted?
Well, for now, I think you can continue with the demonstration, and I think towards the end we'll ask a few more questions. And I apologize
great.
to everybody else whose questions I didn't get to in time. I'll try to compile them in a list that we can send over to Paul so he can, try to answer some of those offline. But beyond that, again, he has to show some more of his examples here before we can wrap up. So
Okay.
Paul, go ahead.
Yeah. Great. We'll do. So okay. Yeah. I guess we'll just give you a bit of a tease. Certainly, this is an intro to the process that we're going to be tackling, and I think you guys are sort of at that level of being teased. So we will stop right there, and I will just carry on with the demo. And in fact, what I'll do here is I have a series of thumbnails already laid in, and what I might do is basically just pick one that I think might add for an engaging demo here. So as I go through this, some of these are done in Alchemy, some of them are done in Sketchbook, some of these are done in SketchUp, and almost all of them are brought into Photoshop and managed in some way. But again, these will serve to show you guys that there is no one right way. It really is about finding your way. And that's, again, another thing I'm going to stress is that I want you guys to find your approach, your style, your way of thinking. And I'm just going to introduce the phases, the established process that you can implement to get to a finished design. But all these things being what they are, I probably might take something from, okay, let's see. Take something from a thumbnail like this, one of these guys, and take it to about, say, there. So let's do that. Let's just pick one. That looks like fun. That might be fun. Okay, let's pick a couple of winners here. Let's see. Let's see here. Okay. I may just have to eeny, meeny, miny, mo one of these to see which one, in fact, I'll elaborate on. Let me also just minimize the number of windows here, make things easier viewing. So also too, in the way that I was saying that there's no one right way, but there are probably, you want to think that there are probably certain things that you want to think about when you're assessing a design. And one thing would be to remember that you just how much time you have, So if you have, say, only so much time to assess a design, it might be easier to do something and block something in sort of a tonal approach, maybe very painterly and suggestive. And that would be good for one avenue of production, and that is to say to just get the general idea of something on the page. Then you just have to remember, okay, if things are then going to be elaborated on once, say, for instance, a design has been decided upon, then what you want to do is articulate. You want to articulate what was, perhaps a bit more of a suggestive piece. And the best way to do that, again, is going back to line. So knowing when to break in and out of line or tone to assess a design is also another another aspect to this work as well. So you don't want to keep your head hunkered down too long, basically, that you're becoming a bit too indulgent. You really do have to assess this stuff sometimes breakneck pace, because there's just so little time. Oftentimes they hire you and they want this stuff done yesterday. So do remember that. Do try and work as efficiently as possible. So one of the things that are beneficial to working in tone is that in establishing things with mass, you can with very minimal amount of sort of legwork or brain calories being spent, and the more experience you have in working this way, the easier it comes thinking about it like this. But you're now just working within a given perimeter, and you're establishing the line work by just designating the space of your mass. But all things being what they are, all things being equal, and all things being symmetrical, you still have to remember that let me just finish this thought here. Okay. That things being equal, things being symmetrical, you want to know how you can build this design on the page so that everything is constructed accurately. And you have to plot your points. So this is the equation part of it, and that is to say that your proportions, how long things are, how wide things are, how tall things are, and the midline, right? So you really want to find that major axis of your form, and building things up and down and out of your knowns, you want to start with the simplest things, your largest forms first, and establishing your midline is going to take a lot of that guesswork out. So if you just literally you're just sort of using your line work, your drawing tool as an X-Acto knife, and you're just cutting out these forms, these shapes on the space of your page, you're starting to project the 3D onto these masses, right? You want to draw through your forms as much as possible, draw through your design as much as possible in the beginning, and you're just building, 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 so that when you do get to some of the more involved ways of assessing your design, such as in tone, you want to know that you've broken things up in a smart enough way that you are, and I'm not going to say treating it like a coloring book, because again, what's the fun in that? But it will make things less scary. You want to know that, okay, if I have one day to really assess this design, to make an improvement on it, an established design, or just to from the ground up, establish a totally new design altogether, you want to be able to make sure that you've assessed your time management in a way that is going to give you the most beneficial product, beneficial to production. And you have to remember too that as a freelance illustrator, I'm not there to back up my design sometimes when it's still being integrated into the various phases of production. So I won't be able to defend my drawing or my design work in any way. It has to be a completely enclosed conversation. You know, the image has to pretty much explain all the questions that would be asked about your design when building it or when putting sound to it. So all the various departments then that are working with your design can get a sense of where things are going, where things need to go, without you even being there. So again, it's very important to be able to know what kinds of questions you have to ask yourself as a designer, as a concept designer as well, and all those things being said, hopefully you'll have a design that is just completely servicing production. You know, it's okay. That's it. That's not only is it got the cool factor, it works. It's believable. It's compelling. It's hitting all of the right notes, gesturally, in its attitude, in its mechanical makeup, the way it's constructed. All those things you have to really be in tune with that. So, okay. Now, having sort of chunked out these masses in a way that I think is it's really sort of speaking what I need of these forms. Again, it's just shape. Shape is form. Form is shape. To then know how your forms are being constructed, what's the material to be able to create a sort of a cross-section, to analyze your work or your forms, your design in a cross-section way is very key. And what that will help inform me in going to the next step is that when it comes time to render a light source, or render light and shadows onto these forms, again, I'll know the turning of the form, the sharpness of that turn, and how the light and the shadow shapes are then built around that idea, those ideas, that information. So again, I'm just slowing down a bit, making sure that my construction of things is right on target. So that's also another thing that is important too, is to know when to work in line work and then work in tone work with your design. And you'd be amazed too, and again, talking about Ralph McQuarrie and Sid Mead, how simple some of these statements really need to be. Just you'd actually realize after doing this time and time again how you will typically make your job a lot harder than it needs to be, just by sometimes saying too much, over-indicating, over-designing, or again, just not being in touch with the process, the phase. Again, I keep saying that word process, but in some ways, art is the act of drawing, is a performance. So to know, how to dribble the ball, your footwork is just going to get you across the court that much quicker, right? And ultimately, score a goal. That's it's very much the same with drawing or with image making, with image manipulation. So things that I know I need to get right are the landing gear, maybe just thinking about how that would be perched from the wing assembly. And again, you have to strive for clear, readable shapes always. And to think of form as a shape and to think of shape as a form is really going to benefit you. Because they are one and the same. They're very much connected to one another. Different sides of the same coin, I guess is what I want to say. Working broadly also and quickly in this way, you're working gesturally, very much how I was taught when in figure drawing class. You work from head to toe. You get the whole attitude of the pose before you you go in and render, say, the surface materials of the hand. All the various textures that you would see of the skin surface, of the nails, etc. All those details really shouldn't be thought of now in this beginning phase. Because the more you get in there, the more you render one part, the more attached you're going to be. And if you haven't gotten the drawing right, say, and you're just going in and rendering all the finished values, then you might make some critical drawing errors that you wouldn't have if you're just focusing on drawing when you need to. So in that way, again, we really want to just work smartly. So that's what I mean to say by trusting the process and holding yourself to it. But okay, so again, I'm being very very slapdash, if you will, with this because I just have to make this happen in a relatively short amount of time. But okay, so say you've gotten to this point. Oops, you've gotten to this point, taken it from the drawing, and you're now applying the masses of the forms, and you're starting to get a better sense of where things are turning. You've analyze the interior makeup with the cross sections, and now you want to pick a light source. And again, for the ultimate clarification, for clarity, readability, just want to keep things graphic, simple, bold. Just pick one light source, and move the light source around to where it's going to give you the most intriguing shadow and light shapes. And by that, you can see here, I've analyzed a thumbnail just really quickly. In just doing that, I've delineated the overall masses and chunked those things out in a big way. And then now it's just what your two shadow shapes are, your light and your shadow. And how do you then create a clear image that has everything broken up in a smart way? And you want your highlights, of course, to be at that area on the form that is perpendicular to your light position. So if you can imagine, for this vehicle, and again, I'm being very simple with this, but that's the name of the game, is say it's sort of rimlit from the side and slightly backlit, but not totally backlit. So I would say light source would be something around here. And then it's just articulating lights, shadows onto the ball of your design, right, onto the forms. So knowing, again, if your forms are spherical, if they're a bit boxy. For instance, the forms on this ship are a bit more organic than, say, the forms, or excuse me, a bit more beveled and industrial, as opposed to the more organic forms on this vehicle, or even, let me pull up yet another vehicle. Okay. Whereas with this one, and again, this is a student work, Jose did a really quite interesting assembly here. I'll maximize it just so you guys can see it. But a couple of drawing issues being what they are, and the forms perhaps could be a bit, have a different sort of treatment. You know, I'm just basically trying to tap into his message statement and then find, you know, yet again a more eloquent, because that's what it is. Even when we're working with our own, on our own work or on our own images, I'll still critique my own work very much, very heavily, and in the same way that I would critique a student's work. You really want to analyze this stuff all the way throughout, you know, from beginning, middle, end, to make sure that you're doing just what is required of you. But these forms, again, are completely have a completely different message statement than the forms on, say, this ship or even this ship here. I mean, these two vehicles feel completely different just for that sort of having an understanding of those things. You'll be able to push your ships to have a greater range of expression, you know, just in that real simple thinking. So that's what I mean by having the forest for the trees thinking here, and by doing it in this way, we're able to do just that. So now it's just asking yourself, what these forms are, what they need to be, and oops. Again, this is a quick and, it's like to say, quick and dirty way of doing it, but you can see exactly how it's all very process oriented. And the highlight, of course, we want to remember is the area that is most perpendicular to the light. So by trapping, bring it up a little bit, by trapping the highlight with my tone, my light tone, I've done just that. And you can see, plotting the point, here's our light, major axis of the light, area that's most perpendicular from the light, and there it is, there's the highlight. So in that way, we just keep going. You know, we assess and we refine and define all of the things that we need to in a smart and cohesive way, until you get to, say, here. You want to separate your light and your shadow shapes, and having, of course, the broad mass, the broad external silhouette of the shape. I can work within that and now just start plotting where I might like my shadow shapes and light shapes. How that might be defined will then dictate where my light's going to be placed. So doing just that, it's now on to the next step. It's separating my light shapes from my shadow shapes. And of course, gather reference. That's something that I do encourage, and we do in class as well. So we're just sort of taking the guesswork out. We're making this as least accident prone as possible. You know, I really want you guys to be able to assess things. Finally, at the end of the class, you'll be able to have you've got the whole process, you know, of how to analyze, how to edit your forms, how to make initial analysis of the design projects, and how to refine and articulate and basically massage this process, this development process here, this refinement process, which is that middle phase after you've gotten your thumbnail or your drawing, and you're now breaking things out in a much more sort of full value range way. We then go from obviously what this was to the middle phase to then the end phase. So this image was pretty much, except for the tank that I just dropped back in the background, this was all arrived at in this way here, just pushing the paint around, so to speak, articulating things from masses to then from simple silhouette to then a light and shadow delineation of things, and then finally, you know, finished surface materials, dings, scratches, camo, all that surface treatment is then going to be expressed in our final illustration for our assemblies. And then at the very end, I will, once I've gotten us to understand that it's about drawing, establishing a real good sense of placement, of spatial placement of your design. Then I will implement the use of photography, of finding appropriate photos to then plop. This was minimally arrived at in that way, and then finally there is one image here where you will see it's for all intents and purposes it is a total photo bashed experience, and that would be this one here. But still, there's line and there's the sort of quote-unquote marker work that has been applied to this image as well. So it's an aggressive back and forth for sure. And again, we just want to add as much to your repertoire in this class as possible. So I'm going to have you guys be doing a number of techniques, a number of approaches when doing this. So I think you guys can see where I'm going, but certainly if you guys have more patience, I'd be more than happy to indulge going a bit further, but I don't know what the prerequisites are, of course, for final formatting for this lecture. So I do want to keep things brief and sort of stay on point in that respect too. But
well,
Ted, I wonder if maybe you
yeah,
chime in.
basically we're approaching our cutoff time pretty soon. I think I have a few more
Okay.
minutes left.
Okay.
So, are there any last minute thoughts you want to add? I guess I can ask a couple more questions before we exit the session.
Okay.
So I'll let
And
you say.
do we have questions
Well,
as well
we have
at the
lots
end?
of questions. Just I'm
Okay.
not sure we'll be able to get to all of them. So,
Certainly. Well, I'll take a moment and just give my final Jerry Springer's final thought, and then you can sort of take advantage of that time and sort of get some highlight questions if you want to throw those at me then.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, yeah, ultimately in the end, is I guess my catch-all statement is I want to help you guys develop your style, because this is what it is. In our career, we have to find our way of doing things. That's why our clients hire us. They want to see our thought process. They want to see our design statement. They want to see our design world. So I will vehemently have you guys developing your own style. It's all about that. But on top of that, it's not just cool for cool's sake. It's not just style for style's sake. We want to have some depth within all of the flash. And I again want to reiterate and emphasize how we will be doing a lot of that. We will be doing a lot of the quote-unquote number crunching, or the math equations, and the mechanical constructive aspects I really do stress in putting in your works too. So other than that, it's really, it's about learning. It has not stopped for me. It seems to get more aggressive the further into this discipline I get. And I certainly hope it will, will inspire you guys. This lecture will inspire you guys to not only take the class, but to go beyond that, and certainly, could hope to design alongside one of you guys on a project in one day.
That would be awesome indeed.
It'd be fun.
So I have 3 quick questions before I wrap it up here. I'm going to ask them one after the other here.
Okay.
So the first one is, to attend a course such as this, what would be your recommended skill level to really benefit from your class?
Okay. I would say beginner students should feel a little hesitant, and that's to say, if you've never taken a drawing class at all, I would be slightly hesitant to take this class. But at the same time, I would like to consider myself being fairly patient. So I would not at all be I would be very open to having even beginner students into my class. But to fully benefit from this class, and I know that there are classes that you can take in conjunction or before that are strictly visual development and the very applied fundamentals that go with that discipline. I mean, this isn't easy. I'm just going to say that. I hope to make it look fun and easy, but it is not. It is labor. It is work. And the more more sort of tool belts you have already on your body coming into my class, I think you will be able to just execute far more work that I think would even be portfolio ready. I've had a number of students say that the work that they've done in my class has actually just gotten them jobs. So in order for that to happen, I would certainly stress you guys at least already have a beginning understanding of even how to turn forms on a page.
Right. It's very awesome. And again, to reiterate one of his points, we do have foundation classes as well, so please check out the site to see more information about those. If you think you need a little bit more touch-up work before coming into his course. The next question I wanted to ask Paul was, in your class, when you give an assignment, will you be giving your students resources and studies to help complete the assignment?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very much that way. I have assignments like I said in the beginning, are a bit more rigid, and that is to say, I have a almost like a design breakdown. I'm trying to thrust you guys into what experiences you would have, what interactions you would have on a professional basis. So in the beginning, it's very much set like that. I will probably, hopefully, be one of the friendliest, quote-unquote, art directors that you'll ever have to work for. That's of course just as a quick sort of pitch as what I want to serve in this class for you is a very helpful art director that is going to just push you to do better work than you can push yourself. And to give you those strict guidelines in the beginning, I actually think it makes for really interesting assignments. And I've just seen a number of students do some excellent work just off of these sort of theoretical design treatments that I have you guys do.
Okay, and I guess this will be the last question. It's a kind of a lighter one, I hope. What do you think about the Japanese way of designing mechs?
I just think that it is there. As I've even through this class have been exposed to a number of students that are outside of my hometown and even my home country, the States, and you can see there's whether it's cultural influence, geographical influence, a number of influences that make up who we are as creatures, but visual creatures in terms of how we see things, and then what we think of those things that we see, and then how we then transmit those feelings into our designs by use of those intrinsic observations of shape or form or texture or atmosphere. But there is a commonality. There's a thread. I'll look at some work that is done by a Korean artist, and it for whatever reason feels Korean, and the French animation feels French. There's just no way around it, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's just one of those perhaps too broad for explanation, or just too many things, too many ingredients that make up that jambalaya of who we are as image makers. But there is a commonality that I see with Japanese mech designers, that there is just such an astringent application to the working functionality. The mechanics are so well conceived, so well built on the page, that you can't question its believability. In fact, they're honestly just blueprints of finished robots, finished mechs, as we are actually starting to see. I don't know if you guys have looked on the internet, but type in like 7-story Gundam, and they're actually starting to build these things. It's amazing. It's really amazing. And in that way, I certainly am inspired to strive to make my designs more mechanically sound, more mechanically sort of believable, just working on the page. But yeah, so it's just sort of in a general way, I guess that's how I would answer that question.
Okay, well, I think that will conclude today's live broadcast. Paul, I want to thank you very much for your time and for basically sharing with us a little bit of your work and what will be happening in your class.
Absolutely.
For
It's been an honor.
everyone who is in attendance, don't forget you can check out more information about Paul's class as well as other classes on our masterclass website. I think a link has been sent out to everybody, but again, it's www.cgmwmasterclasses.com, and there you can find out more information about other instructors as well. But check out Paul's classes as well, and make sure to drop him a note that what you think about his demo today. Again, Paul, thank you very much. And for all of you for attending, thank you. And again, I will try to compile all your questions and send them over to Paul to see if we can get to them in a reasonable time. Otherwise, I apologize if we don't get to you. But that's it from all of us at CGMA. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your weekends. Bye.